Yo, what's good, everybody? Dave Locken with Awesemo.com here with another video for you. And today we're talking second-year receivers. Last year, rookie season for receivers was absolutely insane. From top to bottom, it felt like every single receiver drafted in 2020 went off. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case. And a lot of them who did have good rookie seasons could have been so much better had their progress not been derailed for one reason or another. We're going to talk about all of them, and I got a handful of guys today that I think are going to absolutely explode in their second year heading into 2021. So let's dive straight into this without further ado. But before we do, so I guess this is further ado, before we do, if you like these videos, you appreciate all this content here, and you think maybe along the way we've helped you out at Awesemo Fantasy Football Channel, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, help us get the 6K subs, and let's dive into it. Henry Ruggs may not have been a player you expected to see on this list, but I think there are more than just a couple of reasons to be excited about him going into year two. Ruggs is being drafted as the wide receiver 56 on Underdog Fantasy, which means we're hardly committing much draft capital to begin with. But it's what he can bring to the table as a sophomore receiver that gets my attention. Ruggs put on 13 pounds in the offseason, which he doesn't believe will affect his speed. He said it was mostly to improve as a blocker, but I don't think putting on some LBs is going to hurt him becoming a more physical receiver in contested balls. He already created good enough separation as a rookie, led all first-year receivers in yards per reception, and should absolutely be used a lot more in 2021. Look at it this way. The Raiders drafted Ruggs 12th overall, ahead of Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson. Crazy, I know. But still, as the first receiver off the board just 1 year back, it would be an egregious misuse of first-round draft capital to not expand his role significantly in year two, even though the Raiders have been known to egregiously misuse draft capital in the first round. And the Raiders' offense isn't bad either. They finished top 10 in scoring last year, while Darren Waller posted the 7th most PPR points of any pass catcher, and the since-departed Nelson Agholor enjoyed his best season as a pro, with 896 yards and 8 touchdowns on 48 receptions. Derek Carr was solid too, with a top 10 adjusted completion percentage and the 6th highest yards per attempt. Still, Ruggs will have to put the pieces together on his own, and hopefully his insane speed and athleticism will be more than enough to get him involved not just as a deep threat, only 3 quarterbacks created more yards on deep balls than Carr last year, by the way, but also as a receiver who can create big yards after the catch on opportunities closer to the line of scrimmage. And John Gruden has already said he wants to get Ruggs involved as a lot more than just a deep threat this season. Ultimately, we're spending a double-digit round pick on the first receiver off the board in 2020. His disappointing 10% target share and 43 targets as a rookie can only improve dramatically this season, and we could see him as the number 2 option behind Waller and ahead of John Brown. What if I told you T. Higgins was 12th in targets in the 9 games he played with Joe Burrow under center last year? Or that he was the wide receiver 20 over that stretch? Yeah, Higgins was crushing his rookie season and was on a 16-game pace of 80 receptions, 1,206 yards, and 8 touchdowns before Burrow went down in Week 11 and was replaced by the likes of Brandon Allen and Ryan Finley, who were both disastrous. Higgins was the wide receiver 41 in the games those guys started, and what could have been an insane rookie season ended as an impressive one but left much to be desired. Now Joe Burrow is seemingly healthy, with both him and Higgins entering their second year with some experience under their belts. And while Jamar Chase is an insane talent, we can't ignore that A.J. Green was targeted over 100 times last season and is out of Cincinnati. Actually, Higgins, Green, and Tyler Boyd were pacing season target totals of 117, 124, and 144 respectively before Burrow went down. Burrow is a talented young quarterback who can support more than one strong wide receiver season, as evidenced by last year, and will likely have to throw a lot again this year, with Cincinnati's defense likely being mediocre at best. Burrow averaged more than 40 pass attempts per game through the first 11 weeks, where all 3 of his starting receivers were top 20 in targets, while Higgins earned a target share north of 20%, so you get the point. Oh, and did I mention no receiver saw more deep ball targets than Higgins with Burrow under center, even though he only caught 6 of those 22 looks. There's a ton of room for improvement there, though.
And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock Morning Edition. It is Thursday, August 12th. At some point in time, I'll understand that it's August. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are here to break down all sorts of different slates. 8 games for DraftKings, but for all intents and purposes, 7. 2 split slates for FanDuel because, of course, it's going to be a good time. We got a ton to talk about. We're going to be around here for a while. So as you get in the door, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. But let's start here. Adam, how are you?
Doing good. Always enjoy split slates, so pretty excited for today.
It should be good. I mean, like the DraftKings slate is pretty solid outside of including the Nats-Mets game for reasons I don't totally understand, but you know, it's fine. Gives us something extra to talk about. I'm running some crunches. We're going to have lineups coming in here pretty much constantly throughout the show, making little updates as we move through it. How did your last night go?
Not bad. Broke even for the day. I got killed on the early slate. I lost on the main slate, but I did well on the night slate. Got second in whatever the big tournament on DraftKings was. So that got me back to even for the day, which is nice and makes me feel better going into today.
Always the bridesmaid. Am I right?
Yeah, you sound terrible.
Got it. Should be good now.
You also look like you're sweating profusely.
I am not sweating profusely. That much I could tell you. That's Zoom, man. Zoom ruins me for some strange reason. I mean, to be fair, I feel like I can see through you to your wall. So that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's also because of Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I were sweating profusely. Because yesterday I was, and it felt pretty good to get a little pump on. Now I just feel sore and I don't really enjoy working out. It's fun. It's fun while it happens. It's not fun 24 hours later.
I actually kind of feel the difference. I feel the opposite. Like when I'm working out, it's kind of just like, yeah, okay, whatever, get this over with. But then when I'm like sore after, it's like, oh, I actually did something productive.
I see, somebody said I looked mad sweaty last night. Yeah, that was true. I sat down a half hour after I left the gym. I like being there so that I could really just talk a lot of smack to myself, really get that out of me. Just let my inner self know that I'm being a pussy and I need to just work out a little bit harder. It's not the same here. Anyway, we got 8 games to talk about. Let's go ahead and dive into it. We're starting with likely the least interesting piece of this. Mets and Nats, 7-inning game, 3.9 run implied total for the Mets, 2.6 for the Nats. Let's start with Stroman and Sean Nolan, who I found out was the starter about 5 seconds ago. How are you feeling about Stroman today?
I think it's a good spot for him. I mean, he's more expensive than I would really like to pay for Stroman at 9,900, but it is a 7-inning game, so you do have that complete game upside more so than you would on a full 9-inning game. It is a really good spot against the Nats. They have Soto, they have Bell, they have virtually nothing else in this lineup. And we know Stroman's a good pitcher. He's not a great fantasy pitcher because the strikeout numbers aren't that good, but in terms of just being able to get outs, he's a good pitcher. This slate, pitching-wise, has some good options, but it's not the best. So I do think that Stroman's a pretty interesting option.
I'm grabbing ownership now. I went to early slate to find it and it was not there. And then I realized that that's not where it was. So now that I have it, 15% ownership coming to Stroman. He showed up in 16% of my sims. So I'll take that. Talk to me about what you know about Sean Nolan, projected for 6% ownership right now. That seems interesting. Showed up actually for me in 10% of lineups at the flat, or what used to be the flat minimum 4K.
Yeah, so he hasn't pitched in the major leagues since 2015. So really, really difficult to come up with any sort of take on him based on current stuff because data from minor leagues isn't as you can't dive as deep into it as you can major league stuff. But at AAA this year for the Nats, 11 total games, 9 starts, 47 and a third innings. He's actually posted relatively good numbers, 26% strikeout percentage, 7.5% walk percentage, 4.17 FIP, 4.01 xFIP. Pretty solid numbers there for a guy that now is 4K flat, making a start. And, he went 6 innings in his most recent AAA start. Prior to that, it was like 4 1/3, 5 innings. So he is stretched out. He's 4K flat. He's put up decent numbers at AAA. It's still a relatively dangerous matchup, I think, going up against a Mets lineup that does have some competent hitters in it. But I think he's definitely better, or he looks better at least, than I expected him to look when I saw that he was starting today.
Yeah, Steamer's got him 21% K rate, 9% walk rate, 4.59 FIP. I've certainly rostered worse guys than that.
Right.
And the fact that you're coming in at the flat minimum, that's not too shabby. I mean, Mets lineup is not something that I'm really trying to attack, but at the same time, they're running enough lefties out there that I don't think it's too big of a problem. And I don't know, is 10% of Sean Nolan crazy? Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. The only real question I have is like, how necessary is he on the slate? Because we've seen pretty cheap hitter pricing recently. So you've had some cases where 4K guys aren't necessarily that useful, but we have him getting 5% ownership or so on DraftKings, 5 to 6%, 7% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I think that's reasonable. And like you said, if you get a little bit higher than that, I think that's fine too. The opportunity cost of pitcher today isn't crazy high. Like you have Woodruff, who's likely to put up a big score. You have Bassett, who's pretty likely to have a good game. Means is okay. Tanner Houck has good stuff. But who knows how deep into the game he goes. You have Stroman. Outside of that, there's not really a whole lot here in terms of pitching. So this isn't one of those slates like last night where you had, Burns and Gossman, who ended up not really doing anything. But, going into the slate, you had Burns, Gossman, Manoah, Skubal, had a massive strikeout percentage of only 6K. There was a good chance he was going to have a good game. You had Montas, you had Wainwright, you had all these guys where it's just like, if you get 13 or 14 points from a pitcher, you're probably putting yourself in a hole. I'm not really sure that's the case on this slate.
Okay. Sweet Lou with the super chat saying, thanks for getting up early. It's 11 o'clock.
I wouldn't be awake right now if I didn't have to be.
I mean, I got up at 6:15. That's getting up early. So you're welcome, Sweet Lou. Adam, on the other hand, would have got up in the PM for today.
I probably would have
given
gone.
The opportunity.
Yeah, if I didn't do morning shows, I'd probably go to bed at 4 to 5, and then I would just wake up at noon.
Fair enough. I can't do it. I need that morning time. Something about waking up when it's just the crack of dawn really gets me started.
I really like those days when I do it. I just don't do it very often.
Yeah, you should do that more often then. We can't all just be buying Wizards at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't think I have anything to add here, but is there any chance you're going to Mets or Nats bats?
No, I mean, the bats, it's a 7-inning game. So even though, if this were a 9-inning game, sure, I would love to take some shots against a guy who hasn't pitched in the majors since 2015. But it's only a 7-inning game, so you're still just sacrificing so much. You can make a case for a $4,100 Peter Alonso or JD Davis. They're cheap enough. I mean, you could probably argue that Peter Alonso being 4,100, they're pricing him to have 1.5 less at bats. But as far as a full stack goes, I think you're just giving up too much.
On to Pirates and Cardinals. Let me just make sure that nothing new has come out since we started. Nope, I don't have a Pirates or Cardinals lineup, best I can tell. And I should, I guess, retweet our link for this show. Everybody should do that if you see it on Twitter. 4.2 run implied total for the Pirates, 4.6 for the Cards. It's JT Brubaker and Wade LeBlanc. Brubaker at 11% ownership, LeBlanc at just 2%. How are you feeling about the pitching here?
Not great. Brubaker's actually been okay this year. He's probably priced where he should be, if not a little bit overpriced. The matchup against the Cardinals is okay. Nothing that, I'm really in love with, but there are some strikeouts in this lineup. Brubaker comes in with, I can't find it. He struck out 23.6% of hitters this year. xFIP just shy of 4. Those are pretty good numbers. He has had home run issues, 1.93 home runs per 9. Not a great number there. He's allowed a 188 expected ISO to righties, 190 to lefties. So pretty balanced in that regard. Like you said, Brubaker is getting some ownership at 11%, 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Just seems like he's owned about where he should be. I don't feel really strongly one way or the other.
Yeah, to me, it's neutral. And then there's Wade LeBlanc, who I guess exists on this slate. I don't really see a ton of utility for it. Do you?
Not really. I mean, it is a Pittsburgh team that is bad. I mean, they just gave up a monster game to J Happ. They can do it against anybody. And LeBlanc's not a terrible pitcher, but he's also not good. This year, he's been pretty terrible. But in general, he's kind of just been there for years, just kind of like an average guy. Only a 12% strikeout percentage this year, though. 5.87 xFIP. I don't really see it. I mean, he's not getting owners. He has a higher top 2 pitcher percentage than ownership percentage by a pretty good margin, but I still think I probably just end up getting elsewhere.
This game doesn't really exist for me all that much. Like, I think Brubaker's ownership is pretty spot on. I have the Pirates and Cardinals as my 10th and 11th best stack. Now, I do think that the Pirates are going a bit under-owned, but nothing too crazy. I feel like I have a couple better spots here. What do you want to do with Pirates bats and or the Cardinals bats?
Yeah, I kind of just don't see too much here. I think I'm more interested in one-offs than full stacks. It seems like the ownership is the aggregate ownership for these teams is about where it should be. But I do think $3,800 for Brian Reynolds, $4K for Ke'Bryan Hayes. Those are pretty good price points here against LeBlanc. You can look to Jacob Stallings at $3,300 as well. And then on the Cardinal side, you do just still have cheap bats that have power, like Tyler O'Neill at $3,600, Dylan Carlson at $3,100. I don't mind getting to those guys individually. I do think that they're a little bit cheaper than they should be.
Oh man, this Pirates team is garbage. Like, Kevin Newman's projected for 1% ownership, but in the leadoff spot for a $2,600 shortstop, it's like, okay, there are like worse spots. He should be owned a little bit more than that. And then I start looking at his stats, and it's 83 weighted runs created plus and sub 100 ISO, and you become very disenfranchised with it. Who's your favorite bat in this game?
Carlson at $3,100.
Pops up the most for me, him and Hayes.
Yep.
I don't have anything else really to talk about. Like, this game is not interesting. I feel like every other game either has one team with a really big total or the potential for like giant over-owned stacks that you can get to the opposite side of. This one's just sort of nothing.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that the ownership pretty much everywhere here seems like it is where it should be. So it's more so me mixing those guys in that I like Carlson, Hayes, with some other stacks that look lower owned.
Well, let's talk about this one, which to me is the unquestioned top stack, and it is agreed upon in our top stack tool, but we'll touch on pitching first. Phillies and Dodgers, 4.9 run implied total for the Phils, 5.6 for the Dodgers. Suarez and White, neither guy pulling any ownership. Are you getting to any pitching here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, both these teams have 5+ implied run totals, tough park to pitch in. Ranger Suarez still not really stretched out. They're converting him from a reliever back to a starter since they acquired Ian Kennedy at the deadline. He threw 61 pitches last time out, but I'm still not looking to get to him against the Dodgers. Mitchell White in his most recent outing, July 31st, he threw 58 pitches, but he's 7,200 here. Like, if he were 5K or something, you could, I think, start to maybe roll the dice there, but it's just so hard to get an outcome from him at 7,200 that you really want.
All right, well, let's talk about hitting, and we might as well start with the Dodgers. Number one stack for me, number one leverage stack for me. It's not leverage stack, number one unowned stack for me. I want all of the Dodgers. Top stack tool agrees. Talk to me about LA.
Yeah, they look great right now. I don't know if maybe their ownership comes up between now and lock, but they are expensive, at least at the top with Trey Turner and Muncy. Will Smith, Corey Seager, Chris Taylor, relatively expensive, but it looks like a good spot. Like, Philly's bullpen certainly has some holes in it. Ranger Suarez, you're getting a guy that's pitched most of the season in relief, and now you're stretching him out. Typically, those guys drop off a bit as they're having to go through a lineup more than once. And then the Dodgers, clearly just a very, very talented offense. They're getting a positive park shift going into Philly. Cody Bellinger showing some signs of life lately, which is really nice to see. Typically, not something that I bother pointing out, but I think it's worth noting with Bellinger just because he's been so unbelievably bad this year compared to what compared to everybody in baseball, but especially compared to what he normally is. There was certainly some chance he's been fighting through injury or some other issue. So the fact that he has hit 4 home runs in the last 4 games is, I think, noteworthy. Like, he's at least doing what you expect Cody Bellinger to do recently, and his price tag has come down. So it's just a very, very dangerous Dodgers team that's not getting a ton of ownership right now.
I don't understand it. Like, not even in the ballpark of ownership. We have them with the clear top leverage mark. Is this just a price thing? To me, they seem like super easy to get to. I don't really see a reason. Like, if lock were in 2 minutes, the Dodgers are your top stack by a mile, right? Oh,
for sure. This would end up coming out, like, for example, and it's obviously different because this is an 8-game slate and last night's night slate was 3 games, but it basically was like, for anyone that didn't play it, what happened was Toronto was just like far and away in the best spot, and Toronto actually was getting a good amount of ownership to the 3-game slate, but they were still just like projected to be the top stack and get less ownership than they deserved. So I just jammed in a ton of Toronto, and you understood that they were going to be popular, but I didn't think as popular as they should be. Here, with it being an 8-game slate, the Dodgers aren't even getting that much ownership right now, and they're the top stack. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that ownership number comes up between now and lock. But if lock were right now, I would just have insane amounts of Dodgers.
Yeah, like it doesn't make me happy to say something like this, but Albert Pujols for 2,500 at 2% ownership in this spot against a lefty looks great.
Yeah, I mean, there's some pinch hit risk there, but he's 2,500, and then you also get a little bit of savings because Austin Barnes is in the lineup at 2,900 instead of Will Smith.
Yeah,
obviously you would rather have Will Smith, but it's just another thing that makes the Dodgers stack easier to get to.
This looks exceptional. I don't really know what else to say here. Play everybody from the Dodgers. And it's not even something like we're waiting on. That's the lineup. Like, it's out. We're not like, there's not going to be changes. Well, I mean, there can be, but like, this is what we're expecting. This looks fantastic. What about the Phillies side, though? Do you have any interest there? They're my number 6 stack. I think they're basically properly owned. Real Muto pulling a ton of ownership, but not all that surprising on a smaller slate to see catchers concentrate a little bit in ownership. What are you doing with Phils?
So I thought Mitch White was one of their top prospects, but he's not. I don't know who I have him confused with. He's almost 27 years old. Fangraphs has him as the Dodgers' 41st prospect. He's not really been starting much. He's only made one start in the majors. He started 5 games at AAA this year. Steamer projects him for the 3.81 FIP, 9.8 strikeouts per 9. I don't think it's like a good spot for the Phillies. I don't really think it's a bad spot either. The ownership right now coming in about where it should be on DraftKings. Just a team where I don't have a strong take on them. Like, I think the ownership's where it should be. You obviously can go to Harper. Brad Miller has power. Segura and McCutchen are pretty cheap. But overall, just not a team I feel strongly one or the other. Yeah,
to me, relatively neutral. Like, get some, sure. Yep. Don't get some, doesn't really matter. The Dodgers are the clear prize here. If you're going to be rostering a lot of Dodgers, does that change your perspective on like wanting to have more Phillies or like going to potentially Mitch White as sort of extra chance of grabbing win points? I know we get that kind of question a lot.
No,
I didn't think so.
I mean, like, it's of course, if you think the Dodgers are going to do well, it changes. It makes Mitch White look like a little bit better, but not by enough where like I care. There's so much volatility in that, it just ends up not being something I'm going to factor in. Just like, and like on the other side, like if this game is 14-0 Dodgers in the 6th, there's a pretty good chance you're going to start getting guys pinch hit for, which sucks. It would be better if the Phillies scored 10 runs, but I'm not like building lineups around that. I'll take my 14 runs in 6 innings.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite bat in the game?
Turner.
He's the guy that popped up the most for me. Muncy at 6% ownership looks pretty good. I mean, the entire Dodgers team, I think, should be in like 10% of your lineups at a minimum. So I could throw a dart and pick any Dodger and feel pretty good about it. But I'm going to go with my boy, Max Muncy. Any new lineups or anything popping up? We did just get the Oakland lineup. I should probably do something with that information, considering that's the next game that's going to be showing up here. But let me just paste in my FanDuel sim quickly. And we'll switch it over to say schedule for the rest of the day. This one's a little bit different. 5:30 p.m. MLB Live Before Lock. Yes, 5:30. Eitan and Adam, you will be back breaking down tonight's 4-gamer. Before, do you have any interest in the Field of Dreams game?
Yeah, I think it's cool.
I like the gimmick. I don't care at all about Field of Dreams, a movie that is mostly irrelevant to me. But I think it's
I've actually seen that movie.
Gimmick. Well, there you go. I'm anxious to see like how it looks on TV and how the field plays. Like if we don't have any like park factors or anything for it today.
Is that on the slate?
Interesting. Yeah, it's on the DraftKings slate. It's not on FanDuel. I think that's right. It could be the opposite, but that sounds more like something DraftKings would keep and FanDuel would cut.
Yeah.
But after MLB Live Before Lock at 5:30, at 6:30, NFL Live Before Lock, Laffy and Matt Gajeski breaking it down for whatever NFL games are happening tonight in the preseason. I don't have a single clue, but I'm going to look it up right now just to try to figure it out.
Yep.
I didn't even
Posted
realize
contest this morning and then need to figure out who the hell I'm playing.
So we've got 2 NFL games tonight. The football team taking on the Pats and Steelers Eagles. So battle for the state of Pennsylvania. I bet Laffy's going to be deep into that one. Free content today. MLB Player Projections. If you're watching this show, that's probably pretty interesting to you. Our projections are free. Head to awesemo.com to check them out. Let's keep it moving now. This one should be fun for you. Cleveland Guardians, Oakland A's, 4.2 run implied total for Cleveland, 5.3 for the A's. Eli Morgan and Chris Bassett. Let's start with Bassett, who's pulling 22% ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good option. Cleveland has been pretty frustrating lately. They've actually had some good offensive games. Bassett's probably a little bit more expensive than he should be, especially in comparison to Brandon Woodruff, who's only $200 more on DraftKings. But Bassett has been very good this season. And, as mentioned before, there's not a ton of good pitching on the slate. So looking to Bassett, who has struck out 25% of hitters, 5.7% walk rate, 0.94 home runs per 9, he's just a pretty solid option here. He's getting 22% ownership, but by comparison, Woodruff's getting 65%. So I think Woodruff's the better play, but the ownership is there as well. So no issues with Bassett here. I do think Wilson Ramos catching for the Indians is a slight downgrade, just because he's another guy that's difficult to strike out. But overall, in terms of above average hitters, you're still pretty much looking at Ramirez and Reyes in this lineup.
Just got the Phillies lineup as well. If anybody's trying to keep an eye on it, paying attention to it, that lineup just dropped. So don't be afraid to go ahead and update whatever it is that you're doing, knowing that we have a new lineup for the Phils. I don't know if anything changed or not, but just letting everybody know it did happen. Let's talk a little bit about hitting here.
Real Muto's out, so yeah.
Oh, that's pretty. How do you feel about $2,200 Andrew Knapp?
And that's whatever. I think the biggest thing about the lineup is Brad Miller sitting second at 3,200.
Okay. Does that change your overall outlook to Philly now?
Well, the Phillies full stack, I think, looks worse now because the lineup is just not as good. But agreed. I think Brad Miller individually looks very good.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit now about Oakland or Cleveland, if that's the direction you want to go. But I assume that the answer would be Oakland, because they are pulling quite a bit of ownership. If this is to be 12.9% ownership share on the last run. A bit over-owned, but they are third in our top stack tool. How do you feel about the A's? Mitch Moreland now in the lineup.
I like the spot here. Eli Morgan has had major issues with power so far in the majors. 216 expected ISO to righties, 283 to lefties. You're getting Oakland outside of Oakland, which is nice. The ownership is certainly concerning, and I think it makes sense. This team is just so cheap. I don't know why Mitch Moreland would ever be 2K flat, but he is. So that's kind of a free square. The only issue, I guess, is that he plays the same position as Matt Olson, and you can only roster one on DraftKings. But pretty absurd price tag there. You have Murphy with power, Chapman has power, Marte, Olson, Kana. Like, this whole lineup just hits for power with the exception of Elvis Andrus, basically. And Eli Morgan has had good strikeout numbers so far this year, but I don't really think those hold either. Like, I just don't understand why they would or how he works. He just doesn't make any sense to me as a major league pitcher. I don't think this guy's around long. So I do like the A's here. But, again, with the way ownership looks right now, I'm going to just play more Dodgers than A's.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Just a little bit over-owned. I'm anxious to see where the Mitch Moreland ownership does end up in comparison to Matt Olson. That could be that could be a way to make that A's stack a little bit more palatable if you don't go to the chalkiest part of it. It's not fun to leave Matt Olson off of the stack, but at the same time, if Mitch Moreland's at like half the ownership and $3,500 less than salary, there's some value to be had there. Anything else popping up? No. So anything for you for Cleveland? They're not really pulling any ownership at all. 4.2 run implied total isn't like super terrible. 22% ownership coming to Bassett. Do you have any interest in getting to Cleveland as sort of a leverage stack?
No, not really. The ownership's about where it should be. Bassett, I don't really think is over-owned here. I think the ownership is about where it should be on him too. I'd feel differently if we start getting 40% on Bassett or something like that. But the way it looks right now, pretty neutral on Cleveland.
Okay. Anything else standing out to you from this game? Do you expect to be in situations like this where we basically have 7 games, 14 teams that you could roster, a few that are basically wiped off the mat? you just assume you're pretty neutral to something like Oakland here, where they're a top 3 stack. They're not really over-owned. It's not like, who was it? Baltimore in this case, who's twice as owned. This is just sort of in the ballpark. I assume you're probably just also in the ballpark.
Yeah, normally I'll just get around them in terms of stacking them, mix them in as one-offs. But yeah, just don't really feel strongly one way or the other as far as the stack goes.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm trying to see where I have these guys. Did I really just run a crunch that doesn't have Mitch Moreland in it? That's pretty annoying. The whole point of that refresh for me was to actually make my job easier here. Just not available. Was that the case? Guess I need to refresh FC. All right. Moving on to Cubs and Brewers. 3.5 run implied total for the Cubs, 5 for the Brewers. Kyle Hendricks and Brandon Woodruff. Let's just start here. Brandon Woodruff, 10,200 and a crisp 65% owned the last time that I had the update. What are you going to do with Woodruff? Actually, we got an ownership update 21 seconds ago, up to 67% now. What do you do with Brandon Woodruff on a day like today?
Probably still just going to roster him. I think he's just far and away the number one pitcher here. I think, I've said it a lot. I'm a lot more willing to just go with the field on a pitcher because for one, they're more projectable, but for two, and the bigger one, you're only taking one spot out of your lineup. So I have 9 other spots that I can roster, a low owned second pitcher. I can roster low owned stacks, low owned one-offs, whatever. The issue with going to really popular stacks is, for one, there's a lot more volatility, and two, you're taking up half of your lineup if you 5-man stack, and that just gives you a lot less other options to play around with. So I'm still willing to get the Woodruff here. Not necessarily saying I'm going to end up at way over the field, but I don't think the 67% number is really crazy here, especially because when you think about the pricing on the other good pitchers on the slate, Stroman's priced up, Bassett is priced up, Woodruff is just probably underpriced, if anything. He struck out 30.1% of hitters this year, 2.98 xFIP, 0.72 home runs per 9. He's facing the Cubs, who have 1.5 major league hitters on their roster right now. I'm just going to go to Woodruff and figure out the rest elsewhere.
Is this a case where ownership, you're not even ever really looking at his ownership at that point? That he's going to be in 50 plus, he's clearly the best pitcher. Whatever happens sort of happens, and your changes get made everywhere else. I mean,
I'm still looking at it as far as I'm factoring in just like I factor in everyone else's. My assumption is that it's not going to really matter. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of lineups where it's just this lineup is better because it doesn't have Brandon Woodruff, all things considered. I think it's going to be more, okay, I'll take Woodruff and then I'll just figure out everything else.
Yeah. He's 60+% owned, and I think that he should be 60+% owned. Right. And it just sort of happens that, in those cases, do you find yourself getting him sort of lock buttoned, or do you end up is that a concern to you at all for pitching?
It's not a concern. It typically ends up that ends up mattering exactly how many other pitchers are there that I like, and how easy are the offenses that I like to fit with Woodruff. I think, and I haven't started crunching lineups yet, but I think I end up probably I think it's gonna be easy enough to get him with the Dodgers. I'm not going to start losing him because I start prioritizing the Dodgers. There's not that many other pitchers I feel like I need to get to or want to get to. So this seems like a slate to me where I'll just end up getting a lot of Woodruff. There are some slates, where it's just it's not so much, his ownership that I dislike, but I'm going to come around the field because there are some under-owned pitchers I like. That's not really the case here.
Yeah, I feel sort of the same way. Bassett, 20% owned, Stroman, 20% owned. All that looks pretty normal. I don't feel like anybody's slipping through the cracks there. I don't want to get to Kyle Hendricks and get to your boy John Means, but I think he's properly owned. So if that's the case, then just give me the guy that is unquestionably projecting as the top arm for the day. Do you get to any Kyle Hendricks at the 1% ownership mark?
I don't think so. 9,600 for Hendricks is just a pretty crazy price tag. It's so tough. I mean, on the one hand, he is projected to be under-owned. He has a 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, but it's just so difficult to use a spot on a guy like Hendricks that has struck out 17.5% of hitters this year. He's allowed almost 1.5 home runs per 9. And he's basically the same price as Stroman against the Nats, Woodruff, Bassett. Again, I'm just more, I typically am going to go with more popular pitching and then lower owned hitters in a spot like that.
Let's talk about hitters here. Let's start with the Brewers, who I assume is the more interesting stack for you. Brewers were 5th in our top stack tool last I looked, but quite a bit under-owned. How are you feeling about Milwaukee?
Yeah, I think Milwaukee looks pretty good here. They're in the latest refresh. They're up to 4th in top stack percentage, still projected to be under-owned. And, like I said, Hendricks has really struggled this year, 1.47 home runs per 9, good hitting conditions again in Wrigley. And, I'm not really looking to pick on Brandon Woodruff because I think he's really good and the Cubs are really bad. But Milwaukee has some power in their lineup. Hendricks doesn't miss a lot of bats. He's going to let you hit the ball. It's hot. It's humid. The wind's blowing out. I do like getting to Milwaukee here.
I actually have them 10th overall today. So I'm pretty neutral on them. A little bit under-owned. Yelich, Narvaez, Eduardo Escobar. So I don't mind getting there, but they're a little expensive. I feel like I just greatly prefer getting to more Dodgers.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I do think it's a really good spot for Milwaukee, though.
Okay. Meanwhile, a team that I'm quite confident I'm not going to get to, and I assume neither are you, but maybe this is an opportunity for leverage. Any interest in the Cubs?
No. The only real case I can make for the Cubs is, those hitting conditions are really good. Brandon Woodruff's not as good as Corbin Burns, but he's still very good. The Cubs are getting about the ownership they deserve, down around 1%. You can, you can make the weather argument. Yeah, exactly. You can make the weather argument. You can make if the Cubs somehow go off against Woodruff, 2/3 of the field is dead argument. That's fine in massive field tournaments if that's the approach you want to take. For me, I don't think I end up getting to much Chicago.
Yeah, I can't really justify it looking at it. They didn't pop for anything. They don't look all that great.
It would be different. It would be different for me because kind of the way that I grade stuff out, it's not just looking at like raw ownership, for example. Like Brandon Woodruff's getting a lot of ownership, but for the Cubs to really start looking good for me, I would have to actually think Woodruff is getting less ownership than he deserves. I don't look at it quite as much in terms of just raw ownership. So like,
you meant Woodruff is getting more ownership than he deserves, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I would have to think. Shit, I don't understand.
Yeah.
No wonder I lose.
The thing is to just have strategies that make no sense when you explain them. If I thought Woodruff were being over-owned, then I would be more interested in the Cubs. But the way it shakes out, I don't really think he's being over-owned, so I'm more inclined to just go to Woodruff. I don't think that pushes the Cubs up much for me because, again, like even though he's popular in terms of raw numbers, I don't think compared to the slate, I don't think the chances of him failing are that low. And I don't think that he's getting more ownership than he should.
And not only is it failing, but it's failing in an aggressive manner.
Right.
It's
right.
Like Brandon Woodruff can just have like a passable day, score 11 fantasy points or something. You're not happy about that from having Brandon Woodruff, but it doesn't get you anywhere by having the Cubs either.
Right. And that's the other thing too. This is for all intents and purposes, offensively a 7-game slate. That's still enough teams where if the Cubs go out there and score 5 runs and ruin Brandon Woodruff's day, they're still not winning you a tournament most likely, unless it's like, 5 home runs, 5 individual home runs or something. But like they're still not, there's enough teams they're not winning you a tournament with their 5 or 6 runs. You still need that big game.
Yeah. How much of that big game did you have yesterday out of the Red Sox?
Not enough. I was like half the field on them, jammed in Tampa Bay. That if that game goes the opposite direction.
If only, man. If only.
Yeah. My 2 highest owned teams were Tampa and Toronto. So 18 combined runs for my 2 highest owned teams and did not profit on that slate.
Yeah, I woke up and opened the app and I was just like, oh, they scored 20, eh?
I'm not sure if they ever even hit a home run. I know they hadn't through like their first 14 runs.
Someone did. Someone for sure. Chad will say it shortly, but someone did.
Yeah, I know for a while it was just like a million doubles. And Bobby Dahlbeck. Did you see a highlight of Bobby Dahlbeck's bases clearing triple?
No, but I saw that it was the highlight shown on MLB. Xander Bogaerts homered.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. 2 outs in whatever inning, and Dahlbeck just hits like a routine fly ball to right field, and Randy Arozarena runs in like 8 different circles, and it just lands behind him.
Oh God, did we get another lineup? Oh, we got the Cubs lineup. That should be just shockingly valuable right now. Does anything change for you now that the Cubs lineup is out?
Well, Contreras isn't in, so Woodruff looks even better.
How much do you think that matters? And I know that's like a really dumb question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like a specific number value, but I mean, it increases the strikeout numbers because Chirinos Ks a lot. And I mean, Contreras is really like one of the only above average hitters on this team.
I just added the Cubs lineup. I haven't clicked refresh. I had Brandon Woodruff at 23.75 DK points. When I refresh it, he goes to 23.8. So I gained 0.05 points there for Woodruff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also just it makes the ceiling a little bit better too, because you're just getting a higher K guy in Chirinos.
Oh yeah, like it's obviously not a problem, but
yeah, I mean, you're still talking about a batter he's going to face 3 times and the marginal difference between Contreras and Chirinos. It's not a huge deal. I just still would rather Chirinos be in than Contreras.
Yeah, and he's already like that 0.05 means a lot more when you're in the middle of a group of people than it does when you're already unquestionably like the highest projected guy by 6 fantasy points. It didn't really matter what happened there. Brandon Woodruff was unquestionably the top guy, no matter what you were trying to do. Anything else for Cubs and Brewers?
No, I think that's it.
Got to talk a little bit about the promo code. If you're looking to sign up at awesemo.com, use the promo code MLB live before lock. One gigantic word. Get yourself 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. And that's not just covering baseball, everybody. That covers everything. NFL, MLB, PGA, MMA, tennis, NASCAR, soccer, which is back starting tomorrow, but really starting Saturday. Adam's missing out. You guys shouldn't miss out on the soccer. I'm telling you, trust me on this one. If you're ever going to listen to me talk about anything, play soccer or just simply watch soccer, but also use the promo code MLB live before lock to sign up and get yourself a little bit of a discount on that first sign up. 25% is a lot of percent, and you can get that off on your first week by using that promo code. We've got 3 more games to go. We're moving on to your team. Orioles and Tigers, 5.6 run implied total for the O's, 4.9 for the Tigers. John Means, Matt Manning. I don't get the sense you're going to Manning, so talk to me about Means.
I mean, $5,300 Manning wouldn't be the craziest play I've ever made, but yeah, I don't think I'm getting too much Manning, just not striking guys out. The Orioles also not projected to be over-owned, which again, that matters. If this were a slate where you were getting like 2x the ownership on the Orioles, I'd be a little bit more inclined to roll the dice on Manning and hope to get lucky. But not really the case here. As far as Means go, it's an okay matchup against Detroit. He is coming off of a pretty mediocre start against Tampa, struck out 5 in 5 innings. Before that, he had a good start against the Tigers, which was his first good start since coming back from the injured list. So I'm I don't feel very confident in Means because he overall just hasn't been that good since coming back from the injured list after dealing with an injury. But 9,200 again on this slate in terms of talent, there's just not a whole lot. He's getting about 20% ownership. He's really similar to Bassett to me. Like, I don't think he's a great play. I don't think he's a bad play. I think the ownership is about where it should be. I probably end up with like give or take 20% John Means.
Okay. Yeah. I showed up in my sim in 16%. I don't really have anything else to add to what you're saying. I mean, talk to me about the justification of Matt Manning. I assume because the Orioles are getting 15 to 20% ownership on every single hitter.
Yeah, and actually I had looked at my eyes had jumped to Boston and not Baltimore. Baltimore is going drastically over-owned on DraftKings. So that would be the justification for Manning in larger field tournaments is that 1, he's cheap. 2, even though he's been bad in the majors, there is still pedigree here. At some point, he probably at least not necessarily replicates his AAA numbers, but comes somewhere close. But the biggest thing is just if close to 20% of the field is going to go to the Orioles, they're the highest owned team on the slate. I've already said I don't think there's a ton of opportunity cost at pitcher on DraftKings where you have to roster 2 of them. There is some merit to just saying, man, I hope Matt Manning somehow gives us a good 5 or 6 innings. The Orioles fail. And that's one way I can leverage against the field while also increasing the upside of the hitters that I get because I'm paying down a pitcher. That being said, I doubt I get to a lot of Manning because I don't think it's going to be that necessary. And I do typically care more about leveraging against pitchers than I do leveraging against offenses.
All righty. Well, let's talk a little bit about offenses here. How are you going to manage that ownership going to your Baltimore Orioles? I have them as my number 2 stack for the day, which is great, but they are also dead last in leverage. They are dramatically overowned. What's your take here?
I expect I just won't get to a lot of them. If I'm going to low owned stacks, then individually, you can go to some Orioles because they are going to give you some good value options. Santander at 2,600, Stewart at 2,300, Hayes at 2,700. Mullins is just a really good play in general, always pretty much. So they look good, but they don't look, when you start comparing them to other similarly priced players from other teams, the ownership just isn't worth it. So I'll get to them a little bit where I have lower owned teams, but I expect to be pretty far underweight on the Orioles.
Yeah, there's just really no way to justify it as far as I'm concerned. I think literally every single hitter in the lineup is over-owned to some degree and some to a really excessive margin.
Yeah, play them in cash. I'll be underweight in tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. The other question then is, do you have any interest in the Tigers? I do. I think they're going a little bit under-owned. If I look at the top stack tool, that would be in agreement with me, at least a little bit. How are you handling Detroit?
Yeah, I do have interest in them because they do get to hit in Camden Yards here in pretty nice weather. Means getting, at least a little bit of ownership is nice. It doesn't hurt. Again, it's not really driving Tigers up because I don't think he's over-owned, but it's almost 100 degrees here. It's humid. It's Camden Yards. It's really, really good hitting weather. Means hasn't done a great job of limiting power this year. 195 expected ISO to righties, 185 to lefties. Looking individually at the Tigers ownership right now, only 6% going to Scope, 6% going to Haas. We know he has power. Cabrera's at 2%. And a cheap price tag. Like Grossman's the highest owned guy on the team at 7%. So you can get to a really high upside spot for the Tigers because not only is Means kind of a question mark at this point, but the Orioles bullpen behind him is absolute garbage. So a really high upside spot just from start to finish for the Tigers.
Yeah, this is a weird one. You get the benefit of that Means ownership if you want to go to the Tigers. I don't think that they're all that bad of a play just independent of looking at that, but that is a bit of a bonus knowing that John Means is in 1/5 of all of the lineups. Helps out a little bit. It's a great game to target in terms of trying to go to the opposite side. Like, I'm happy to take some of that ownership that should have been going to Baltimore and handing it over to the Tigers.
Yeah, like one of the big reasons the Baltimore looks so good is the extremely, extremely good hitting conditions today. That applies to both sides here, obviously.
Yeah. Crazy game. Man, Baltimore is just pulling so much ownership and like constantly. I really need this Orioles-Tigers series to end. So like, I don't feel like they're just permanently getting jammed down.
Yeah, I really wish DraftKings would just change the pricing so that like every average to above average hitter on the Orioles, with the exception of Mancini, is at $2,500.
We're about to get to this, but I want to bring it up now just in case, because I want to get your thought process. We have Baltimore as the top value percentage on our top stacks tool. We have Texas as essentially the same and basically unowned. Do you ever look at it from a value perspective and think like, oh, maybe I could offload some of that Orioles to the Rangers? Or is it just you'll find your value elsewhere?
Yeah, like I don't look at it in those terms because I think that when you crunch lineups, you just naturally find the value. Like that's kind of the point of using an optimizer. So, if for whatever reason I'm hand building lineups, that would be a place you can look at it and be like, well, if I need to go to a cheap team who is similar to Baltimore and getting less ownership, like the Rangers show up. But when you're using an optimizer, it's just finding the value for you. And I know that my process, as far as choosing what lineups I'm going to play, is going to get me away from the Orioles. Obviously, those lineups have value somewhere because they fit within the salary cap. So I don't really I don't factor that part of it in at all.
Okay. Had to ask. Well, let's talk about that game then. Mariners. Rangers, 5.1 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.5 for the Rangers. We got Marco Gonzalez, we've got Mike Fultonevich, and we've got Marco Gonzalez with a crisp 47% ownership. Talk to me a little bit about Marco Gonzalez.
That is like the one pitcher ownership on the slate that seems very strange to me. Like I understand why he's getting it. He's been pitching better lately. He's facing Texas, which is one of the best matchups you can get. This is still Marco Gonzalez. The guy has struck out 19% of hitters this year. He has a 5.04 xFIP. He's allowed 1.91 home runs per 9. Is he likely to have a good enough game at 6,700? Yeah, but 47% ownership going to a guy that's bad is kind of crazy.
Is bad is what you're looking for. Yeah, I
don't like that. That's the spot where if I'm going to start getting to Sean Nolan or Wade LeBlanc or Matt Manning, at higher percentages than the field, it's coming at the expense of Gonzalez. It's not coming at the expense of guys like Woodruff and Bassett.
So like he showed up in, where's he hiding? 33% of my sims, and he's at 53% ownership right now. To me, it's really easy to just not get to 57 or 53% of him.
And the thing is, too, so much in baseball comes back to hitter pricing. If we had really sharp hitter pricing, Marco Gonzalez looks like a much, much, much better play. But pretty much every team we've talked about, even if it's, not teams like the Orioles, where it's like, yeah, the whole team's too cheap, but they're also getting a ton of ownership. Pretty much every team we've been able to point to, at least a couple of guys where it's just like, yeah, these prices don't make a lot of sense. They're way too cheap. So I just don't think it's going to be difficult to make good lineups that just are not relying on Marco Gonzalez.
Yeah, I don't like. What's the pivot to Marco Gonzalez?
I don't think there's any one individual one like that really stands out, because I do think that among the cheap pitchers, Gonzalez clearly has the best matchup, and none of them are particularly good. But when you have 48% ownership going to Gonzalez, and then you have 5% going to Nolan, 2% going to LeBlanc, 1% going to Manning, 2% going to Fultonevich on the other side of this game, I'm unlikely to grab one of those guys and say, oh, I'm playing 35%, but I can just play, half the field on Gonzalez and then be pretty far overweight on that entire group of guys. If I even need to go cheap at pitching. The other alternative is that you just save money on bats and you get more of Brandon Woodruff or Stroman or whoever.
Yeah, that Marco Gonzalez ownership is truly bonkers to me. I would say that that's the worst play of the slate at that ownership. Is that crazy?
I think it's the most overowned pitcher. I don't think that's even debatable.
Yeah. Oh, no.
The only reason I don't want to say like bad play is I do think that given the matchup, like he projects as a good point per dollar value.
Yep.
It's just that only gets you so far.
Any Fulte at 5,900 against the Mariners?
Yeah, he's one of the pivots off of Gonzalez. Again, not somebody I'm jamming into tons of lineups, but he's bad also, but he's comparable to Gonzalez. Like he has a 5.27 xFIP. He's struck out 16% of hitters. He's allowed 2.38 home runs per nine. He's actually having a worse year than Gonzalez, but they're both just so bad in a one game sample. Gonzalez is likely to beat Fulte, but Fulte's actually cheaper for one. And for two, it's a one game sample where Gonzalez is getting 20 times the ownership. So I'm fine getting a little bit overweight on Fulte while I'm getting underweight on Gonzalez.
All right, two things. One, you slackers need to hit that thumbs up. 91 likes is not nearly enough. Let's run that number up a little bit. We need to get, I don't know, into the what in the world? Okay. We need to get like well north of 100. So hit the thumbs up, helps us out a ton. Two, remember when Fulte was like kind of good?
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a really long time.
Projected K rate from Steamer right now and a 541 Steamer FIP.
Watching him pitch is also just such a miserable experience if you haven't.
It's so bad.
Like he just so wanders around the mound like he has no confidence whatsoever in what he's doing, which he probably doesn't and shouldn't. But it's such a miserable, like give me a guy that throws like 95 and thinks he's good, even if he's terrible. If I'm going to like roster that guy and have to watch them, Fulte is just unbelievably difficult to watch.
It's really gross.
It's kind of like Clevenger. You know how uncomfortable it is to like if you have money riding on Clevenger, even though he's really good. Like I'm not comparing him to Fulte. It's just so uncomfortable to watch him like fidgeting on the mound the entire game. That's basically how it feels with Fulte, except for then you also have the fact that he's terrible.
How are we handling the hitting here? I assume the Mariners are the more interesting team for you, but is this a spot where you do like I brought it up before? Now I think it's a little bit more relevant. Do we get to the Rangers just simply because of Marco Gonzalez's ownership?
That's a spot where, even though I think the Rangers are one of the lowest probability plays, like they're the only teams they're ahead of right now in the top stack tool are the two teams that are playing 7 innings and the Cubs. So they're one of the worst teams in terms of chances of success, but they do look more appealing to me than the Cubs because even though Woodruff's getting more raw ownership than Gonzalez, I don't think Gonzalez's ownership is deserved in the way that I think Woodruff's is. So I am interested in going to Texas here. You have a really cheap Yanni Hernandez that, is really cheap and can run. Adolis Garcia has power. He's cheap. Nate Lowe can hit. The rest of the team, you're kind of just hoping, to get lucky. But at the very least, looking for like Adolis Garcia one-offs, I think makes a lot of sense.
Nalo is the only guy with a weighted runs created plus from Steamer north of 93 today.
What the hell did they have Adolis Garcia at?
91.
But why?
I don't know.
The guy has a 112 WRC plus this season.
How bad was it before that? I guess is the question.
He's never really played in the majors. He's played 24 games in the majors before this season. His last full season at AAA was 88.
That's not ideal. I mean, every Zip, Steamer, the Bat, they're all sub 90. I mean, prior to the 424 plate appearances this year and 14 plate appearances, they were both in the aggressive negative.
Yeah, but I mean, he also has a total of 448 major league plate appearances. So,
you'd think that would carry more weight, honestly.
Yeah, like I mean, okay, so obviously
he's got a sub 300 on base percentage too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, pretty much everything I do is based off of projections and everything. I'm gonna go ahead and say that the guy that has hit 25 home runs with a 112 WRC plus this year is not in a below average spot against Marco Gonzalez.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, look, 250, 300, 517 slash line in AAA in 2019. Did you just not play last year, I guess? Oh, yeah. COVID.
Minor.
Yeah. 88 weighted runs created plus for that 2019 season in AAA. How old is he?
28.
He's 26 for that. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, and they play in the PCL or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, which is a bandbox.
Yeah, which is how you hit 32 home runs and be a well below league average hitter.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, if you're trying to buy power, grabbing a righty against Marco Gonzalez isn't the worst idea in the world. I got nothing else here. This is a fascinating game between Marco Gonzalez's ownership, taking a shot on a $5,900 Folty, trying to take a shot on some of these Rangers against Marco Gonzalez's ownership. Not a lot is going to feel great.
It's going to be a really frustrating game because what's going to happen, like a lot of the time, is Marco Gonzalez is going to succeed and he's going to score like 15 or 16 DraftKings points. But I just think that not being with the field on him is still the best way to play it over the course of a season. But there's a really good chance this is just a very frustrating game if you don't have Gonzalez.
So lock is 12-10, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Just making sure I know when our out is. Final game. Red Sox, Rays, coin flip. 5.5 run implied total for the Sox, 5-4 for the Rays. Tanner Houck and Drew Rasmussen. Can you roster pitching here?
Think you can take some shots on Tanner Houck, not going to Rasmussen. And Houck, I don't think is a great option because he typically just doesn't go that deep in the games and he is priced up. But in terms of talent, he's like the one talented pitcher on the slate that's getting no ownership. 3% on DraftKings. In his most recent starts, he's thrown 74, 75, 87 pitches. So, I mean, you're assuming he's going to throw like 70, 75-ish pitches. He does have the highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 34.4%. He's been really, really good. It's just a matter of him not going deep in the games. But I think at the extremely low ownership and the fact that he is, even though he's overpriced for how deep he's likely to go into the game, he is still giving you a discount in terms of raw salary compared to guys like Stroman and Bassett. So I do think he's kind of interesting in that regard.
Thoughts on this take? I'm not touching any team after scoring 20 runs.
Is that you or YouTube chat?
Does that sound like something that I would say? Don't do this. Obviously, that's a not smart way to play DFS. Just put that out there right now. Of course, that's YouTube chat. Anyway, let's talk about the bats here. I've got the Rays 4th. I've got the Red Sox 5th. Of the Red Sox, basically neutral from a leverage perspective. Rays a little bit overowned. If I check out the top stack tool, that's about how Tampa Bay is shaking out. Boston a little bit lower than I would have expected. Talk to me about bats in general. Which team do you prefer?
I prefer Boston. I just think the matchup with Tanner Houck's really, really difficult. The hitting weather is still good, so I think both teams have upside here. Tampa Bay getting a lot of ownership, second highest top stack percentage. Boston getting ownership about where they should. I think it's a really high upside spot for both teams because of the hitting conditions, but I do like the matchup better for Boston against Rasmussen and whoever comes in behind them than I do for Tampa Bay against Houck. One thing not related to this game to mention is we just got the Brewers lineup and it is not good. Jace Peterson's in, Manny Piña's in, Jackie Bradley's in. So a bit of a watered down lineup for the Brewers. No Avisel Garcia, no Omar Narvaez, no somebody else that I can't figure out who it is.
I'm rerunning.
No Tellez. No Tellez, no Narvaez, no Garcia.
How does that change the scope of that game for you, just off the top of your head, or do you not have that in your brain power yet?
No Kane.
I don't mean that negatively.
No Kane is the other one. I mean, my initial take is like all the things that you liked about the actual game environment are still there. Kyle Hendricks isn't a very good pitcher. The hitting conditions are great. It's just, you're gonna be less excited about rostering Jace Peterson, Manny Piña, and Jackie Bradley than you would about Tellez and Garcia and Narvaez.
Oh God, it's just Sean V just explaining what regression is in chat when never looking at regression in any way is just mind-boggling to me. Can point out a team's strikeout rates against lefties on the road as if it's a relevant stat, and then be like, well, 8 out of 10 times the team underwhelms the next day.
You didn't know that regression works immediately? Like, regression over the course of a 162 game season always happens the day after they score 20 runs.
I cannot wait till basketball season starts again so he's not in chat. Yeah, I said it. I'm trying to look through this Red Sox and Rays stuff now. Brandon Lau with 25% ownership is a massive number today. If you leave him out of a Rays stack, you could really make not that you want to, but you can get there a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I don't
really get why the Rays are getting so much ownership compared to like the Dodgers.
No, neither do I. How do you approach a slate like today where we've got a lot going on early, and then this is clearly a large offensive environment? Do you build differently because of that?
No, I'll be ready to late swap if I need to.
Okay. Because you could obviously shut yourself out to this game pretty easily by going to, an Orioles stack with low-owned one-offs and low-owned pitching, avoiding the Marco Gonzalez pieces of it. Obviously, the Dodgers are going to be looking pretty good to you and I. It's interesting to have a late-night hammer be this big from an offense perspective, because I assume this is the most aggregate ownership game out of anything that exists today.
Yeah, most likely.
Anybody else you want to touch on here, Red Sox or Rays? I just finished off my crunch.
Nope.
We just went through it. 8 games up, 8 games down. Call it 7.5 games or whatever the actual percentage is. 7 7/9, I guess, since we have a 7-inning game. Let me drop this in here. I want to get my final update. Have you seen if we've had an ownership update in the last minute or two?
Nope.
Perfect. Main slate ownership updated 14 minutes ago. I'll take it. Actually, we're going to have to wait for that Brewers update because that one's going to be relevant. Just looking at what I've got right now, Dodgers still looking quite a bit on our own to me. Tigers still pretty interesting for me. But yeah, that Dodgers team, even still, just based on our last ownership run, AJ Pollock now into double digits. It's not just Trey Turner at the top, but Max Muncy, 9% owned. I think it should be a lot higher. This Dodger stack is still unquestionably my top option for today.
Yep, same page.
Are you guys not going to talk about the Atlanta-Cincy game? No, we're not. Is that on anything? It's at 5-10. I assume that's just a siloed game. It's not on DraftKings. That's all that matters to me. So no, we're not. But we're not going anywhere. We still have 10 more minutes to go. And I would be remiss if I did not talk at least a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show, and that would be Jock Market. Love Jock Market. I like the stock market nature of it. They've turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange, so you don't have to wait till the end of the game to get money. If you want to sell off your shares in the middle of the game, you can do that. You can buy and sell shares of players throughout the entire game. You get into their pregame IPO, and then you can just sit on your couch, buying and selling on your phone. NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA. You can make real money every hour, every minute, every second. And you can buy, sell, or hold. You can do whatever you want to do. If you feel like you missed out on someone, you can buy in early in the game. If you're trying to offload some mistakes that you might have made, you can sell them off during the game. And you can use the promo code Awesemo. Get yourself $50 on your first deposit. Exclusive to the Awesemo community. You don't want to miss out on it. You don't want to leave money on the table. So use that promo code. Go check out Jock Market. Download that app in the App Store today. We have 9 minutes to go. Adam, I'm going to make you answer this question, even though I don't think that you have an answer prepared, but that's fine. Who is your dong pick for today? Who's homering on this early slate?
I have no idea.
Great answer, man. Way to go there. Matt Olson at the top of the home run model for me. Very nice matchup against Eli Morgan, and is pretty clearly my top home run model option for today. Now let's take some questions. Premium Slack, if you want to answer any, or if you've got any questions, please drop them in YouTube chat. We will also listen to those questions. I will hit Adam with them. He will say, I have no idea. And then I will give you the real answer, the answer that matters to everyone else. And continue to hit that like button. We are now north of 120 likes, but if we can get to 150, that would be great. Tyler O'Neill scratched. Is that a real statement?
That would be the second time in 3 days.
Bass Maniac, I do not see that yet. So you might have to go ahead and bite your tongue. Are you saying scratched or simply not in the lineup? Because that's two different things. Let's see what else we've got popping up here. I know El Negro Loco asked it earlier. I'm happy to answer it on the stream. If you were going to have one stack on FanDuel, who would it be? My answer was unquestionably the Dodgers. They are way, way, way north of everybody else in terms of my data and not pulling nearly enough ownership. So the Dodgers would be my preferred FanDuel stack.
Yeah, that sounds right to me also.
Any chance of playing Texas pitcher? Yeah, I think so. Especially if Fultzy's out. I mean, not that him being at 1% ownership really matters, but if that just means you're getting off of a little bit of the 53% of Marco Gonzalez, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing a lot of him, but it's not going to be hard to be overweight on him while getting underweight on Gonzalez.
Let's see what else we have here. Where are the questions? If this were basketball, this would just be like never-ending stream. We don't get the same sort of questions in baseball. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit trickier to ask questions, but don't be afraid to get those questions in. Is it cool to mini stack Yanni and Adalis with Santander one-off?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem at all.
Yeah, I kind of like that approach for Texas, just getting like a couple of their guys and hoping that they at least make it so Gonzalez has like a mediocre start.
How do we feel about Brubaker?
Don't really feel anything one or the other. He's just like, he's there. I don't think he's under-owned. I don't think he's over-owned.
Yeah, he's a 10%er in ownership, 10%er to me. What else we got? How many homers for Pujols today? 0 feels like a pretty safe answer, but I think I like him as a DFS play.
Yeah.
What else? I thought I saw one there. Oh, who's my favorite stack today? Dodgers, and it's not even remotely close.
Agreed.
Like, if this is right, we have them as the top stack. We have them as the best leverage stack. I mean, if you have the Dodgers in 25% plus of your lineups, I don't think that is crazy at all. That's a team that I would like to hitch my wagon to. John Means or Stroman?
Slight lean towards Stroman, but I won't have him because I'm not getting my lineups in time.
I've got Stroman at 16% in my model and Means at 15%. I do have Means projected for more fantasy points, but just a little bit different because of the game environment for Stroman. So I think it's pretty close. I think you could flip a coin there. Is Yelich starting? The sites aren't updated. Yes, Yelich is starting. Austin Barnes worth it to add to a 4-man Dodger stack or go somewhere else? Seems fine to me. I mean, there's never if you've got a 4-man Dodger stack and you're on DraftKings, there's never a problem with adding the catcher as well. It doesn't matter that it's Austin Barnes and he has very little power or very little help. Like that, to me, that doesn't change anything. I'm happy to go to a 5-man and I'm happy to go to Barnes at 2,900 as a catcher. Let's see what else we've got coming in. Thoughts on Sean Nolan? Anything at all there? Missed earlier if you talked about it. I think that he's, I don't want to say more than viable, but at 4K, you don't have a lot to really worry about. If it goes bad, your lineup isn't necessarily dead. I mean, you're probably not winning a GPP, but it doesn't really change anything for your overall outlook. And he's not really pulling much ownership, so go for it.
I think he's fine. He's another cheap guy you can be getting overweight on instead of Gonzalez. Again, I unfortunately will not, but I would like to be.
Yeah, exactly. Seattle stack for all the money. I hope not. It's fine. To me, they're like the exact middle of the pack. I have them 7th. They're probably a little bit overowned, but nothing too crazy. I don't mind it all that much. Anything else coming in? Premium Slack, we're at 12:07:45. We got about 2 minutes, 15 seconds to go before we get to lock. So if you don't have a dummy lineup in yet, you're a dummy. You should make sure you have that in there. So
and you should not have someone from the Nats and the Mets.
Yeah. As long as you put your dummy lineup in with anything other than that game, you're fine. You could continue to operate as if nothing else had happened. But in these situations, I would only use the 4:00 games if I was building my dummy, just in case something bad happened in my life from noon to 2:20. Adam, how's it looking? You going to get those lineups in?
No,
not at all. Okay. I tried, man. I tried. Guys, like button 126. Is 24 more likes really that crazy? Is 150 an improbable total? While you're here, if you've already got your lineups in, if you're better than Adam in that regard, go subscribe to our podcast feed. Go listen to Betting You with Ben Raza, Matt Kajeski. You don't find that on YouTube. That is podcast only. You don't want to miss that, guys. It's a good show. Love those guys. Two of the smartest guys that I've talked to at this company, present company included. So make sure you're listening to Betting You. Hunter Renfroe or Dylan Carlson? I have no idea.
I like Carlson.
Okay.
I mean, they're both fine. Like it's baseball. It's 1v1s in baseball are literally just flip a coin, but in most cases, but Carlson.
12:09, 20 seconds, 40 seconds to get that lineup in if you haven't done it already. Again, we've got MLB Live Before Lock round 2 coming up later today at 5:30. Adam will be back for that one. And then 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, NFL Live Before Lock. We've got 2 preseason NFL games. Laffy and Matt Kajeski are going to be breaking that one down for you. It's going to be good stuff. The NFL is back. Preseason NFL is just great. That's me selling it as best as I can, but you should watch it. Battle for bragging rights in Pennsylvania. Laffy's got a lot going on there. Go Steelers tonight. But we're locked. 12-10. That's it. Did you get your lineups in?
No.
There it is. That's what we got. Well, you got plenty of time until the 12:35 start for Pirates and Cardinals. So good luck there. Good luck to everybody else. Like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Awesemo Odds. Subscribe to Awesemo Fantasy Football. Good luck. We're done.